Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are, and welcome to the latest in the Russo-British Chamber of Commerce webinar series. Today's topic for discussion is titled How to Safeguard Your Business Through Cybersecurity Protection Measures. My name's Alf Torrance, I'm the Executive Director of the RBCC, and I'm delighted to welcome David Holden and Alexei Antonenko from Orange Business Services for today's webinar. David is well known to many of you, but just to remind you, he's Chief Commercial Officer for Russia and the CIS, and Alexei is Head of Business Development for the same. Orange is, of course, a household name, and we're very proud of our association with this iconic company. So thank you to you both for taking time out to be with us today. Thank you, of course, to our RBCC members and friends who've taken time out as well to listen in. Before we get started, I'd just like to go through the usual ground rules. After I finish, David and Alexei will make a presentation. I'm sure many of you will want to put questions to David and Alexei, so please use the hands up function on the Zoom app. However, by far the best way of getting your questions heard is to use a chat function, and me and the team will be monitoring it throughout the hour that we've got this webinar, and we'll try and pick out the more popular themes. Please keep your questions succinct, and it'd be very helpful if you type in your name and company on the Zoom ID tag. If you can't do that, please include them with your question. We will have everyone on mute, so please unmute yourself when speaking, and most importantly, please remute yourself when you've finished. We will be recording this webinar, so we'll post it after the event, and David's kindly agreed to allow us to post his presentation as well. And if you want us, we can send that to you directly. David, this has been an extraordinary time for business. The lockdowns meant that everyone has had to migrate online in very, very short order. Despite the eventual easing of the restrictions, I suspect businesses will do more online than they did prior to the pandemic. I know, speaking for my organization, we're still not totally aware of all the cyber risks we're now exposed to. Very much looking forward to hearing your insights on this absolutely critical subject for businesses of every size. Over to you, David.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Share. Okay. I think we regularly use the phrase "the world is changing," and because things have been moving at an incredible pace these last few years, but even in our industry that never stops. And is subject to almost constant change. The last few months have been wild. Things are moving so fast and things are changing so much. We've done a bit of a study where we've taken a lot of stuff we commissioned with Gartner. We've done some work with our own customers. And I want to give you a little bit of a view on that before I hand over to Alexei to go through more on the security, because I think the study that we did gives an indication why security is becoming so important. Now, Orange today, we're a global company. We've got 7.3 billion revenues in euros, over 3,000 enterprise customers across the world, 25,000 employees, 12,500 international, of which 900 of them are in Russia. Outside of Russia, we also handle the SME market. We don't deal with SME here. So a lot of the information we get is not just related to Russia, it's global. So here, what do we see? We're seeing that in the market that we work in, the highest spenders are the biggest impact. And those high spenders tend to be our customers. What's happened is their needs have changed instantly, overnight. Everybody's rushing for the new normal, and it's creating a lot of challenges for the businesses. We've not covered anything to do with government and healthcare because that's not a market we do work in here, but I'll take you through some of the things that we've found. If we look at Russia versus the rest of the world, the initial impact didn't seem to be as high. And I guess the rationale for that is down to Russia being a little bit isolated from the rest of the world. The sanctions and that did allow Russia not to be as severely impacted as an economy that was much more connected with the rest of the world and dependent on it. And the fact that Russia does have the big switch on government spending because of the war chest they've got, that's allowed them to reduce somewhat the impact in H1, although there's going to be a reasonably large negative impact in the second half of the year. We see sort of major differences in our industry around network equipment. People are just not spending on that. We're seeing big changes in communications, unified communications, like the tool we're using today to communicate. Seeing a lot of move into much more managed services and cloud infrastructure. I'll explain why in a little bit. And again, we're seeing a lot of decline in people spending to build own solutions, again, because of what's happening. We took a look at sort of industry, short-term negative, long-term uncertain yet. I don't think anybody knows what's happening. We've seen a lot of stop in mergers and acquisitions, which mean a lot of the large IT projects are stopping. Very interesting, we've seen from industry and manufacturing who tend to use people like distributors to take their products to market. They can't meet, they can't have the face-to-face. And in this area, they never invested in any form of e-commerce, never invested in unified communications. And there's been a mass rush to get those type of solutions up and running. There's been a big rush and a focus on health and safety, obviously with the coronavirus, but it's driving forward other health and safety. Little comment that we saw from Gartner, the last pandemic did give way to the roaring 20s. So, you know, we've got our fingers crossed here that we might see a similar rebound, but we don't know when. If I look at banking and insurance, this is quite interesting because Orange are a bank in Africa, a completely online bank, as well as being in certain European countries. And what we're seeing both from our own experience and from speaking to our banking clients, which we deal with most of the Russian banks, is they're really looking to shift a lot of the business into mobile native, which is what we do as a company, and cloud native. They want to get away from having infrastructure that they own. The rationale there is they're having to go to remote work. If they go to remote work with a system that's fully based in the office, they have a very clunky, non-flexible scenario to try and work at home. And also, they've got a massive additional security perimeter. There's a lot of trying to understand customer behavior going on. The big thing that we're seeing is a big shift from customer acquisition to customer retention. A lot of using data about people and about the way they behave to try and get more going on. And I think the interesting thing, again, this came from IDC, that this significant negative impact, which is across the entire value chain, is forcing through necessary business model change. And I think in Russia, you will see that Sberbank are very much leading that change ahead of anybody. Indeed, they're looking at more moving to as much mobile native and cloud native work as they can. Going further on, looking at retail, I guess the big interesting thing that we've seen inside retail, those customers that had a proper digital transformation strategy, that really did have an e-commerce strategy that was driving sales alongside their retail shop environment, are those that are actually thriving. Those that didn't have or had clunky systems are really struggling. The other thing we're seeing as well in this market is multi-channel communications. The ability to communicate via various different platforms, things such as Facebook, vContactor, through the web, through streaming, through voice, single platforms. That's a big, big trend. And I think the other thing we're seeing, and we're not necessarily seeing it here, but we're seeing it in Europe, a lot of the competitors in this market are starting to fall apart. And the belief here is that that's going to cause an upwards price pressure. Going beyond that, transport and tourism, I'm not really sure why we've mentioned it other than the fact that Orange as a company support the entire global CETA contract, which runs operations for most of the world's large airlines. This one is so unpredictable. Nobody really knows what's happening other than everything's stopped. And there's not really that much that I can say here. If I turn to us and I turn to the telecommunications sector, the likes of ourselves, Ross Telecom, Beeline, Megafon, what we're all seeing is currently there's a lot of move to how can we do remote work? Our customers are saying we need to remote work. Our customers are saying the perimeter of work is changing, and that's changing a lot of the security requirements. So as they move to remote work, they're looking at reliability of systems, they're looking at security systems, and they're looking at scaling and infrastructure. An example here is if you have a fixed network, all of your sites are connected, they're all protected by security, and you want to move to a remote network, you have to put in extra capacity. You have to put it in almost instantly. You have to then work out how are we going to change the way that we do security. And this is triggering a lot of moves in the industry to software-defined networking, where you can scale up your bandwidth, scale down your bandwidth, add security services, remove security services, and have that flexibility to move from central to remote to a hybrid of the two. And to drive that as well, we're seeing a lot of move, a big move to moving as much as possible, as quickly as possible into the cloud, and even more of a move to unified communications. And I made the joke with Alf when I was talking earlier. Digital transformation's been on everybody's tongue for several years now, but it's not, the internal customer requirements that's going to make it happen, and it's certainly not external customer requirements. COVID is driving this faster than I'd ever seen it move before. Now, we did a little bit of a mini survey with our customers. 71% of our Russian clients say that they will stay with a large part of their employees working remotely, and that includes the bank. Of that 71%, 83% of their employees are currently working remotely. And 43% have said that they're seeing much more cyber attacks than they were getting before, and they're predominantly coming via remote employees, because the security perimeter has changed. It's no longer directly under your control. It's in somebody's home. It's not a router that you're managing. It's not bandwidth that you're controlling. It's some ISP that's controlling it. Other things that we've seen is in terms of large projects, about half of them are on pause. Another 37% aren't changing, and only 12% are cancelled, which is quite interesting in terms of what we see from our clients. Now, just to summarize, what we're seeing in every vertical is different. Speed of recovery, the impact, the actions that they're taking, but there's some real commonalities between them. Everybody is looking at cybersecurity because the perimeter's changed. Your employees are not inside your building anymore. They're not behind your firewalls, behind your routers. They're in their own home. They're behind devices that you can't control. They're using their own devices that don't have the setup that you have. We're also seeing another commonality is cloud. People are definitely moving as much as possible from server-based systems into the cloud, because nobody knows if this is the one and only wave or there's another wave. Do we come back to work and then suddenly have to go back to home? If you're in the cloud, you can actually do that. Homework, how companies create a package for their employees that's secure, that's scalable, and that's flexible. There's a lot of thought going into that, and that's also driving what we call on-demand services, which I mentioned, software-defined services, where you move from fixed to a service that is flexible, variable in size, and where you can add and remove services such as security. And again, finally, health and safety is on the tongue of everybody. Now, the final point I'll make here is that changes made today are going to remain after COVID. The changes that we're doing around security, around flexibility, around homework, they're going to stay, because people need to have that flexibility to move from A to B. People have started to realize, particularly in this country, that working from home or having a more flexible lifestyle works, and it works well for them. But the issue is, are we ready for them? Can we secure them? What can we do? And that's a very open question to anybody as we move forward. Now, I'll hand over to Alexei, who will go through some of the security issues that we're seeing and how we've been addressing them.
Yeah, thank you, David. I'll share my presentation. Just a second. Yeah, okay. My name Alexey Antonenko. I am not a native speaker as a David, but I'll try in English explain how we can increase our security and which solution we can apply to increasing solution. And when David says that 43% of workers see an increase in attacks, it means that the remaining 57% don't see the attacks. And it's a problem. We are being attacked, but we don't see it. Why we are being attacked? Why we have been attacked? Hide them. First of all, we work in an unusual environment, so we are less careful. Sometimes we give the laptop to children. Sometimes we use our home devices for work. We check. This slide. We check news more often and can visit malicious websites. This all helps a hacker attack and obtain our personal or corporate data. Now I'll tell you what each employee should think about when working from home, and then I'll tell you what the IT department should do to make the remote work safe but easy. First of all, what should we all know when we work from home? Typically, when we work from home, typically his pathway to the system includes antivirus, authentication, and firewall. It's a very simple scheme. The scheme is vulnerable in many ways. For example, a simple DNS redirect is used to redirect a user to a phishing website identical to the original. It almost can't be noticed by the users or IT engineer, I mean engineer from IT department. Then malware downloads and install automatically, and then the cyber criminals gets needed credential and access the corporate resources. In our example, it's CRM. To protect yourself from these threats, you need to have full protection. It looks like this. Here we see that a large number of security elements is used to complement the basic level. In most companies, security software is either not purchased. Is not purchased. I mark it red cross, or not configured. I mark it yellow minus. For example, a personal firewall is available on all workstation, but it's already set up. My recommendation, all of the built-in software should be configured. The next level of the cybersecurity is when the telco operator help you to protect your data and networks. This is especially important for big company, of course, and we offer to our customer several services that increase the level of protection. For example, it's like protection from DDoS attack, managed firewall, cybersecurity operation center, and what else? And two-factor authentication. So we see that the public internet is full of the threats. And in general, I believe that the IT department should take full care of the remote works security for the employee. However, if for some reason this doesn't happen, you can do something to increase security by yourself. And this is my recommendation. All of this recommendation is important, but most important recommendation from my side, please always apply patches and update software. Use WPA2 mode in Wi-Fi router. Of course, use trusted DNS, and I strongly recommend disable additional services that you don't need, for example, Torrent, FTP, and so on. Okay, what should IT department take into account? My favorite advice: don't panic to all departments. But to be serious, test your supply chain. What does it mean? Until recently, before the quarantine, you had partner with whom you worked for many years, and you were sure that the emails were virus-free. But now that everyone was at home and everyone could take care of security in different ways. You can't be 100% sure that the emails and attachment are safe, and it means that check all incoming emails for the viruses. Then put in quarantine those devices that were out of corporate network for a long time. What does it mean? This should also be in the rule for IT department, and if you worked from home for 2 or 3 months, for example, and didn't update Windows or Mac operation system, it's better to give your laptop to the IT department to update your operation system and antivirus software, and check your PC for infection. And please do it before your first time switch on your PC in the office. Education employees. Of course, you need to constantly conduct training among employees, and not only to explain to them what is safe and what is not, but you should also test them regularly. We ourselves send phishing email to our employees twice a year, and those employees who open them receive a training. It's also my recommendation. We also offer such services to our customer. We name it security awareness, and I think that each company should apply this approach in this company. It's all from my side, and my last recommendation: use integration approach and involve partner for more secure communication. It means that you can combine your own experience and experience from telecom company to apply the best solution in your security. If you want to check and increase your security level, feel free to contact me or David. Our contacts on the slide, and that's all from my side. Thank you. I wish you good health, stay safe yourself, and keep your devices safe as well. Take care, and thank you very much for attention. Thank you.
Great. Alexei and David, thank you very much for that.
I think
Yes, David.
I was going to say, one of the things that is critical to everybody here is you have to understand and consider that your security perimeter has changed. When you're in the office, you have a secure perimeter. When you're outside of the office, you don't. You need to look at how you're going to change that perimeter, how you're going to move the way you work inside the office to the edge. And that really seems to be the key to managing where you're going forward at the present moment. Staying with what you have at the moment opens up so many channels for attack that you didn't have when you were centralized within one office. And as you've seen in numerous publications like the FT, almost daily people are getting attacked by cyber threats because their perimeters changed.
Great. Thank you,
Yeah.
David and Alexei, both for that great overview of what's happening due to the coronavirus, and to Alexei for the more detailed and practical steps we can take. Please, to the audience, put your questions to the expert panel. You can dive straight in if you wish, or do it through the chat room function. But to kick off, I suppose, I think this one's for Alexei, really. Do you have a sense of how much cyber attacks have increased since the coronavirus has started? You may have already mentioned it, but I might have missed it.
Is this question to me?
Yes, if you can, to either of you. But it sounds like it's more in your purview.
Yeah, David, are you ready to start to answer the question? And maybe I'll.
Yeah, I can answer the question.
Sorry, David.
Yes.
Okay.
We've had massive numbers of attacks increase. For instance, every single bank in Russia started to get a lot more DDoS attacks, people trying to get in denial of service and attacks there. It's probably one of the largest things we've had to do is a massive increase in DDoS protection, which is stopping ingress into their networks to block them having access. So yes, it's massive. It's definitely targeted, and it seems to be targeted on various industries, and it comes and it goes. And a lot of it's been addressed. We're not the only provider of DDoS. I mean, I know Telecom as well have seen the same thing as we do, that a lot of people are going for DDoS attacks, and there's been a massive increase in Russia by ourselves and others in providing internet umbrella protection to stop that happening. So yes, we are seeing it.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, nothing to add. It's absolutely true. Attack is increasing in a huge.
Thank you. Yeah, we do. I appreciate you said that you don't specifically deal with SMEs in Russia, David, but we have had a question asking what are some of the issues faced by SMEs rapidly scaling up in size in terms of cybersecurity?
Okay.
What advice would you give to them?
Well, I mean, you know, in France, we manage a lot of SMEs. In the UK, we manage a lot of SMEs, and all over Africa, we manage them. So we do have experience with products for them. It's not something we provide, but some of our competitors here do. My advice would be to start looking at a software WAN-defined strategy. Instead of going out and buying huge amounts of bandwidth as you grow, instead of going out and buying large servers as you grow, you can move now to products based on things like Cisco Victella, where you can have a single box, you can have scalable bandwidth, you can turn services on and off as you need them. And from an SME, that allows you to grow as you want to do, as your business grows. And counter to that, if your business has a downturn, you can turn services and bandwidth off as well. So looking at going towards software-defined services gives you the ability to scale up, scale down quickly without large investment.
Great. Okay, I'll wait to see if we get any comeback on that, but thank you for that. We've got another question, and it's, is it the business's responsibility to have updated cybersecurity measures in place to make sure they're still GDPR compliant? And he asked, what would happen if there's a data breach due to the low level of cybersecurity measures in place for remote workers?
Okay, you're still responsible for GDPR, just as you are if it's inside your main offices. And yes, I have a terrified lawyer that's telling us what we need to do, that's enforcing a lot of policies that people are going, why are we doing this? And the reason that a lot of these policies are being enforced is to make sure that we stay compliant, not only with GDPR, but also with Russian law as well, which is different but equally as important. So yes, you are still responsible.
Thank you. Yeah. Good. Any, Stuart? You're always good for a question.
Thank you. Okay. I thought we might do that. Hello, David. You're looking very smart, if I may say. The only question is, are you wearing trousers? But we'll put that aside. My question, well, actually, I made one observation, which is that I was really surprised at how quickly the banks were able to move their staff en masse home. And in some cases, they kept the payment system in an office, in a physical office, but they even moved that out. And that to me was, I mean, I actually am really glad I wasn't running a bank, because I can't imagine the sort of crypto issues that they suddenly had to deal with. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but my question was, at some point in this process, I think we all started to think, do we have capacity? I mean, if everybody suddenly is going online from home, a lot of systems are being used far more than they were in the past. How much stress does that put on the system? And then how does this impact 5G, apart from the fact, of course, that 5G is responsible for the virus, which we all know. But I mean, how
3 questions, Stuart.
Yeah, no, but how, so 2 things. One is the capacity. The second is, how does this impact, or maybe it doesn't, the implementation of 5G? Okay,
I can answer that. I'll also answer the banking question you raised in the first minute. I think when the crisis first happened, our engineers were out there working like crazy, along with Ross Telecom, Beeline, Megaphone, and GTS, because they all.
Has he just gone quiet? I think that's hilarious. David, we can't hear you. Must be a capacity issue. Nothing. Can you hear me, Alf?
Yeah, you're fine. He's just dropped off.
Dave, maybe you need to just go out and come in again.
I did not set this up. Oh, you've been used to hostage.
Stuart, can you hear me?
Yeah,
now we can hear you.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, because I'm not hearing you. What I was saying was, when it came to the banks, it was almost done in a matter of days to move them. It's interesting that you mentioned bandwidth, Stuart, because there was a lot of noise from Ross Telecom that they didn't have the bandwidth to cope, and it took them, 2-3 weeks to get that bandwidth upgraded to what they needed to do, but they do have the bandwidth now. Ourselves, we had a crisis planning where we could grow the bandwidth quickly, and I think we added 70% capacity in the first week. We were lucky, and we didn't get hit like Ross Telecom did, because we don't have the business to consumer part of that Ross Telecom covers. We only have business to business, so we were okay. 5G doesn't exist in Russia yet. But what 5G will do is drive even more data coming through the air onto the backbone networks. You'll start to see everything connected. It wouldn't surprise me that if masks, who knows, but it's not here yet, but it will cause a much bigger capacity usage.
Yeah, but when you say it's not here yet, David, I mean...
Hopefully that answers your question.
Well, yeah, no, my question is it going to be here next year, the year after? Is it something that's imminent? Are you getting this?
I can hear you now, Stuart.
So, okay, so my question was, is 5G imminent? I mean, is it something that comes in this year or next year or? David?
Do you get that, David? David?
Oh, I think he's,
yeah.
I was going to try and use chat.
No, Stuart, I couldn't hear your question. I just heard a Dalek.
Oh, that's
I thought you were shouting exterminate.
That's my other self. I'm asking, what's the time frame?
I can hear you now. Do you want to repeat the question?
Yeah, what's the time frame? Is it 1 year or 2 years or 5 years before we'd start to see it in Russia?
Megaphone are currently running a trial in certain areas. And the Russian government is pushing for a single 5G infrastructure because the business case doesn't stand up, I think, in the lower population density areas. I think you will see the big boys, Tele2, Megaphone, Beeline, playing their mobile 5G networks in major cities. But they'll be doing it in concert. You won't see one doing one area, another doing another area, because it'll be a single network. So within a year or two, you will see the major cities with 5G. Outside, I don't know if there is a business case.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions, please? David, one, it's sort of related to what Stuart was talking about, and it's, I appreciate it's not really totally in your sort of area, but it's just quite interesting. One of the major complaints we've had from business is having to work remotely. There are certainly certain things, regulatory issues they have to deal with, which they still cannot do. And I'm just wondering if Orange have got a view on that. And what I'm talking about specifically is electronic signatures. I mean, that's become a massive issue.
Okay.
And it'd be quite interesting to see if you're trying to lobby governments as well, because obviously that would help as well. Hello? Did you get that, David?
Hello. Yeah, you're talking about electronic signature.
Yeah. Sorry. The question is, we've had a lot of comment from business that they can work quite happily at home, but the one thing that stops or forces them to have contact with people and with all the health and safety implications. I appreciate it's not totally your view, your sort of responsibility, but it's something I'm sure you're sort of working to reassure government that it's doable.
We currently operate an electronic signature system, but nobody can get onto our network without it being a secure tunnel. Nothing can be signed without it being a secure system. So everybody's tied into our maintain electronic signature at home. However, you see me now dressed in a suit because I'm in the office doing physical signatures because we're in Russia and they do like the blue stamps.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's what I thought, but I was hoping it might be moving on. I mean, we're sort of gathering all the sort of learning points from the coronavirus lockdown to feed into our various channels, and that will be one at the top of the list. Sergey Averin from London has a question.
Thank you, Alf. My question to David. On 12 May, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
But David.
David, can you hear him?
No.
No. Should I write it down maybe?
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, sorry. I seem to be getting intermittent traffic breaches, and I mean, I will say one thing here. A lot of this traffic breaches is because of the way the internet works and a single internet exchange. Although I think Guy Wilner from iAccelerate with the second internet exchange is rapidly trying to get involved to help that.
It seems to be working reasonably well to you for some reason. But
hear me now?
Okay. Try again, Sergey.
Hi, David. Can you hear me now? Not at all.
Okay, send me, put it in the chat.
Good.
Are you going to put it in the chat or?
I will try to put it in the chat.
Alexei, do you hear this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so can you put the question to Alexei and then hopefully
Yeah,
David will hear.
sure. Alexei, you know that, and actually all of us, we know that starting from 12th of May of this year, many of state arbitration courts have been using electronic hearing, as I may say, or virtual hearing in Russian courts. And today I spoke to 9th Arbitration Appeal Court, and they do have this system. And I know that also Moscow Arbitration Court using this, and I know that's a huge question and security issue connected to this. And as the representative of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of the Russian Federation, of course, I'm talking about our daughter companies, and among them we have ICAC, International Commercial Arbitration Court, at the Chamber of Commerce in Moscow. And we also have more than, I believe, 12 branches in different regions of the Russian Federation. And the next step for this network is to organize online hearings as well. So my question to you, and hopefully to David too, do you have such experience of cooperating with organizations like us? And because you know cybersecurity questions, and it's a matter of money, of course, and for the state organization, for state system, of course, it's a kind of less important than for private companies as ourselves. So that is why partnership with or. And my question is, if you had kind of experience with dealing with other companies on a similar issue, or maybe potentially if we can do similar with RFCCI and with the International Commercial Arbitration Court in the future. Thank you.
Do you want me to comment, Alexei? Because I mean, we can't actually comment on stuff that we do with the government. We can't comment on anything that we're doing with anything that affects any security service. But suffice to say, we do have experience in providing those secure circuits, not just in Russia, but on a global basis, and providing secure systems. However, what you will find, if you are providing a government with a secure service, for instance, an embassy of any government, you will provide the network, whatever, they will then fit at each entry and exit point, they will fit their own devices. So you will take something, they will encrypt it again, and then it will go across whatever bandwidth is, and it will be decrypted by their equipment. You as a provider of telco services, or you as an integrator, do not have any access to those. Now, I'm not going to comment about Russia because I'm not allowed, but I can comment about the UK. Inside the UK, GCHQ control the government security boxes. Inside the UK, they're the ones that decide what go on there on government comms. Where BT provides something, or Orange or anybody provides something, they don't get any access at all to those solutions. It's completely the government itself that does it.
Something connected directly to RFCCI and the International Commercial Arbitration Code, because we are private system and we are not connected with government in any way. So that's why if you have that kind of experience to dealing with that kind with private companies to establish cybersecurity measures.
Yeah, well, we do. We've done a lot inside the world. I mean, we work with the United Nations, providing United Nations secure video, audio, and data communication. Virtually every single one of the world's airline records and all the data that supports that, such as when you go to the US, all this personal data that goes across is carried by us on systems that we've either developed or have been part of the development with someone like CETA. So yes, we've got quite a lot of experience of doing that on the private side, as well as working on the government side. I think another area we've worked with is European Space Agency on their secure communications around the world.
Good. Is that enough, Sergey? Happy?
Great. I'm happy. And just David connected to European Space Agency today. We'll be witnessing flight of SpaceX to International Space Station today night time. So everyone to be aware.
That's cool.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, David. A question really, I suppose it's from someone, British business in Russia. I suppose the question is, what they're asking is whether there's a sort of equivalent of the data commissioner that they have in the UK in case of cybersecurity breaches. What's the procedure for reporting that?
Roskomnadzor manage this. They are the regulator inside Russia. They regulate in the same way as you would have Ofcom in the United Kingdom. They not only regulate, but they audit and check.
Okay, great. And another question, could you expand a little bit on how Russia's recent data sovereignty laws have fed into your work with big international clients in Russia?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
If you take a typical global corporation, they have a lot of cloud data or stuff that they store in a global cloud that they need to use. But they've also got a lot of stuff that is Russian and is subject to Russian data law. As long as you do the entry on the territory of the Russian Federation, the data entry of the Russian Federation, you can actually transfer a copy of that data into your core database and store and manipulate that data there. But you must maintain the initial data entry point and the main data store on the Federation of Russia.
Thank you. Okay, great. Right, that's all the questions in the chat room. Any other questions from the audience, please? Just shout out or use the hands up function, please. Any more questions from the audience? No, nothing going. David or Alexei, is there any final comments you would like to make? We might get another question, but if you'd like to make any closing comments, that would be very helpful.
Well, I think my closing comment is that all businesses are changing the perimeter of their operation. homework is vital at the moment and will remain when you leave. You really need to look at how you're going to secure that, because the more ingress points you create to the network, the more ability you give to hackers to get into your network. And you really need to focus on that, because some of these attacks really are taking down businesses, and they're causing, well, you know, taking of data and then charging huge amount of ransomware for doing it. It's critical that you protect your business.
Thank you. Alexei, any final comments?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much. And if next time I can say something interesting, I'll do it with pleasure. Thank you. Much special to David for help to answer these questions.
Right.
Yeah, thank
David
you.
and Alexei, thank you very much for a really interesting food for thought, and I'm sure that's the same for the rest of the listeners. Sitting in the SME sort of side of life, we unfortunately don't have our own IT department, so we have to sort of figure this out for ourselves. But what you've said is very helpful, and I know for bigger businesses as well, that will be the same story. The audience, thank you very much for joining us again. Please look on the website for our forthcoming webinars. We have them weekly. Delighted that you joined us today, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
David, thanks very much. Alexei, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.